I'm in the Library of Congress today with Sylvester Stallone. And Sylvester Stallone, thank you very much for giving us this time.
My pleasure, David.
Now, the Library of Congress in 2006 said that Rocky was a national treasure and put it in our National Cultural Heritage list of films. Was that a surprise to you that of all the films, this was one of the most important films ever made?
Yeah, that was a stunning revelation because, when you start out, my intentions were to do like a little footage of what I did last summer kind of film. I never thought it would ever get to this magnitude, so yeah.
So in that movie, you conceived of Rocky, and then you played Rocky. Was it hard to get that movie sold to people?
Very hard because, and I understand it, I was basically a classical nobody. And at that time, there were a few men in Hollywood that actually considered themselves rather machismo, and they could have filled the role in a sense. But I just knew this was the crossroad moment. And if I didn't hang on, if I didn't go all in, and the film was a success, I would have never forgiven myself for the rest of my life.
So the idea for Rocky, where did you come up with that idea?
Well, there's a big misconception about that. Everyone thinks it's, oh, I was watching Chuck Wepner fight Muhammad Ali and he knocked him down. That was the fabricated type story. Rocky Marciano, who was basically my size, had a computer fight with Muhammad Ali when he was suspended in 1970. And the light bulb went off. I said, this is kind of interesting. And but then again, no one in Hollywood knew who Rocky Marciano was. So in 1975, the Chuck Wepner thing was more contemporary. So I used that as a reference of the, I guess the Bayonne bleeder or the neighborhood loser going the distance with the champion.
So does it surprise you, disappoint you, or make you feel good that people actually think Rocky is your life story and that you actually are a boxer in life?
It befuddles me, it does, really it does.
Because people think you really were a boxer and this was your life story.
I know. They actually thought, oh, they found some fella who actually was a pug at one time. And that was actually, probably to this day, a lot of people think that I'm a little short on the gray matter and I'm more of a Rocky-esque character in reality.
So to go back, you grew up, where were you born?
I was born in Hell's Kitchen, New York.
And then you grew up to some extent in Silver Spring, Maryland?
Yeah, the grandparents lived in Washington, D.C. Then they sort of migrated to Bethesda, then Silver Springs, Maryland, yeah.
Okay, and your parents, what did your parents do?
Well, my father was kind of a real tough guy, but he focused on hair. The Stallones had a family were very into cosmetology, and my mother was too. And then she was the first one to open up a woman's gym in New York in Washington called Barbella's, which I thought, great name for a daughter, Barbella.
So were you a great athlete when you were young and strong and muscular?
No, I was completely manufactured. I wasn't a physical specimen at all. I just had an epiphany when I went to see Steve Reeves in Hercules Unchained. My head exploded. I finally found that's the role model.
So when you told your parents what you want to do is be an actor, did they say get a real job or something like that?
Well, that's the line in Rocky, because you weren't born with much of a brain, so you better start using your body. They didn't put much faith in that particular occupational choice. So I just said, look, guys, it's one of those things where they said, we'll have something to fall back on. I go, what? Literally what? I'm not good at anything other than daydreaming and imagining. I'm not pragmatic at all. I'm totally abstract. And they took me to, I don't know if I ever told anyone this. At 16, and after being expelled from 11 schools, at 16, they took me to the Drexel Institute of Technology. And they ran a battery of tests. And in conclusion, and I still have it, they said, Sylvester seems to be deficient in this and deficient in that. We recommend him to be an electrician's assistant or a tab sorter, whatever that is. And I keep that as a reminder.
So you wrote the script called Rocky, but before that you were an actor, is that right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But not exactly a very successful actor.
Thriving? No.
So how did you support yourself in those early days?
Well, I cleaned lions' cages, I cut fish heads, I was really good with sturgeon in the deli. I was kind of a night watchman in this building. I just did a multitude of things, delivery boy, you name it. But primarily I did those things. And this is after 4 years of college that I took these jobs. So I would have my days free so I could, quote, make the rounds.
But you were making the rounds as an actor, but people weren't saying we really want you so much, but you were writing at night, or what were you doing?
Well, what happened is I said, my God, I'm not going to make it. This is, now I'm starting to get like around 26. So I got a job as an usher. And people said, why? Well, it's $39 a week. Who could turn that down? But more importantly, I could watch films all day long. And I started to dissect them at night. I had a little one-room thing in Sutton East, a little kind of a transient hotel. And I would take a little inexpensive tape recorder, record the soundtrack and the dialogue, and go home and try to replace the dialogue. No, it was like a game. And after a while, I started picking up a little tempo and a little rhythm. And the first 5 screenplays, they were pretty horrendous. You know, it's like What I Did Last Summer type screenplays, until finally I came to the New York Library, and I went down in the basement, and they showed me parchments, writings of, you know, Emerson, Dickens, but Edgar Allan Poe. And that's when the light went off. I went, Poe, talk about a misunderstood artist, way ahead of his time, the literary Van Gogh. And that's what triggered, that's what changed everything.
And how long did it take to actually write Rocky?
3.5 days.
That's all.
This is not a finished product, but as you know, you're a writer.
Okay.
But you had the format. You had
How did you write? You write longhand or
longhand? I write long.
So a producer, Mr. Winkler, right? So you give them the script,
Yeah.
and they say, yes, we'll buy it, provided that you are the writer, not the actor.
Totally, absolutely.
And you said no.
I said, guys, it's not for sale. It's just not for sale. And at that time, I was broke. When I say broke, I mean broke.
So finally they said, okay, but I heard that they gave you like a 15-day trial period.
They did. They had all kinds of morality clauses. Basically, if you like spit on the ground, we can replace you. And the first scene we did was me shaking down the fella along the docks. You know, come on, give me a Coke, you owe the loan shark money. You know, if you want to dance, you got to pay the band, kind of a thing. And something happened. They saw, wow, this actually might work.
So when the Academy Award nominations come out, you get 10 Academy Award nominations. You're nominated for Best Scriptwriter and Best Actor. And it only happened twice before, Orson Welles and Charlie Chaplin.
Who?
And also the movie is nominated for Best Picture. So were you all of a sudden amazed and astounded, and what did all of a sudden your high school friends call you up and say, I really knew you were great, can you give me a job?
Of course, everyone, all the backslappers were there. And yeah, it was mystifying. And also it emboldened me in a negative way too. Because I said, I told you, you know, say that kind of thing. See? And I think I swung that pendulum way too far to the obnoxious.
Did you expect to win the Academy Award?
No, not at all. Because actually every film back then was kind of a statement film. I mean, All the President's Men Network, going and Bound for Glory. And then there's Rocky, which is no statement really. It's just about a man wanting to have a little bit of respect and love.
So you get the Academy Award, the Best Picture, and then as your life changes, all of a sudden you're famous and you're extremely wealthy. You made a lot of money because you were an owner as well of the film?
No, I don't own a percentage. There was some, I think, a little devious behind the scenes machinations there where when you're naive, you're going to get burnt. So I have no ownership in that.
George Lucas owns Star Wars. He owns everything.
He's a smart man.
And you own nothing of Rocky.
I'm an employee.
Okay, but you did okay.
I did fine.
So most actors are thrilled if they have one part like Rocky in their whole career.
Yeah.
You had another one, Rambo.
Yeah.
Now, Rambo was not something you created, is that right?
No, Rambo was a novel by David Morrell. And I was the 11th choice. Everyone, it was like, I don't know who was next after me because they had gone through everyone. And it passed, including 3 different directors. So this had become sort of a pariah of sorts. The first time we go in there, Rambo was, in the original screenplay, was horrible. He was a psychopath. He killed children, he killed fishermen, this and that. So I said, if I'm gonna get involved with this, I see the character going on beyond this. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to rewrite the screenplay. And I want him to go right to the edge of violence, right to the point where he's being pushed, but he pulls back because, similar to James Dean in East of Eden, he wanted to be accepted back into the family of man.
So if Rambo got in a fight with Rocky, who would win?
Rambo.
Rambo.
Easy.
Because...
Not even a fight. Unless it's in a ring. See, first of all, Rambo is a killer, for real. He's almost a psychopath when that switch flips. Rocky is a good guy. You know, he has mercy. The other one has no mercy.
So when you do these movies, let's say Rocky, you actually are performing the fighting scenes, and isn't that hard because you're not a professional boxer? So how did you actually learn how to do that and not get hurt?
David, the hard part is the choreography. It's trial and error, because it's one thing to just film a regular fight, but to create dramatic beats and looks and whatever, it takes hours, months of trial and error. So it ends up being written down like notes: left, right, switch, move, the head feint. And I thought, if I don't do this myself, it's never going to be done right.
But in the end, when you're boxing in the movie Rocky, in the Rocky movies, somebody is hitting you.
All the time.
And did anybody really hurt you a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a lot of photos where you actually see distortion.
How many times have you been injured in doing movies? Do you had like 70 some stunt injuries?
Oh, I'd probably say more than anyone in the world. I've had.
Why do your own stunts? Why don't you get a stuntman?
I don't know. It's just something. It's like the call of the wild, like a Jack London novel. I just get up there and I go, I can do this. See, there's a difference between stunts and when you hook yourself up to, for example, you're jumping from train to train to train and this and that. And that's just a certain kind of actor doing those sorts of James Bondian stunts. Then there's the kind that you become very, very physical and you engage with other people and you do it yourself completely, no doubles. That's going to lead to a lot of injuries. And so I chose more of the confrontational kind of stunts, you know, jumping off a waterfall, fire stunts. I mean, of course, I would have some very good doubles, like at the time, like Mark D'Alessandro and Diamonds Farnsworth. But the majority of them, you do them yourself, and they come with a lot of injuries.
So you have the successful Rocky series, and you have the successful Rambo series. But after all these successes, at some point, people say to you, well, maybe you're too old to play these parts. And all of a sudden, your agent says, maybe we can't help you as much. And you're seen as a washed up actor by some. How did that feel after you're at the top of the mountain? All of a sudden, all the people told you how great you were. Now they're telling you they can't help you. Was that a real disappointment?
It was. Then again, it's that fourth crossroad. Okay, do I listen to them, or how do you feel? Do you feel still competitive? Is there, as Rocky would say, stuff in the basement? I go, yeah, but I just have to do it age appropriate. That's when I came up with Expendables, where you can't do it alone, but I'll take a group of actors that are not doing so well, and you put it all together. And I got the idea when I took my wife to a rock and roll revival where you have like 20 groups, and each one was worse than the next. But together, it was an interesting ticket. Like, oh, look at this. And I thought, why don't I do the same? I take all these guys who perhaps on their own were struggling, including myself, put them together, and that, like, I want to see how this turns out. This is kind of interesting.
When you go to a restaurant or you go out anywhere, do people come up to you all the time for pictures, autographs? Do people come up and say, I want to arm wrestle you or something like that?
They do all the time. And usually with an arm wrestler, I go, oh, you don't know who's the killer in the room.
Okay, so you have the success of the Rocky movies, and then you have a sequel, the Creed movies,
Yeah.
right? And by the way, on Creed, there's another Creed movie coming out. Is that
I
right?
believe so, yes.
Well, you would know. But I'm told that you're not going to reprise your role as Rocky. Is Rocky ever going to reappear on the screen?
Oh, boy, you're really... There is a possibility. I've written half a screenplay because this is a story where obviously his days in the ring are long gone, where he now tries to save his neighborhood, or he thinks he can, because that area right now in Philadelphia is just littered with fentanyl. It's terrible. And he involves himself, and he realizes you can't save the neighborhood. You know, Rocky in his simple mind. So he starts to focus on a couple of these characters, and it becomes like the new Adrian, but with all the 2020 problems of today. And then there's a fellow that comes in from Mexico, and then Rocky takes him in under his wing. And before you know it, it's the Rocky and Adrian, and he's sort of the mentoring this horrible existence until it becomes tolerable.
So what's more pleasurable, writing, acting, producing, directing? Which of those do you like the most?
Directing is fantastic, but you lose your life. It's 7 days a week. You wake up in the middle of the night jotting notes. Writing is a complete horror, complete horror. Have you ever seen a truly fresh-faced writer?
Well, like Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah, exactly my point. Just haggard, gone, dead at 39. Writing is rough, and I have it's almost like being a composer. Every word, as you know, is a note. It's not just typing. Anyone can type, anyone can talk into a recorder, but to actually get the fluidity and the essence of dialogue, it's beautiful, but it's hard.
So if you were starting today in Hollywood and you're giving advice to a young actor, writer, producer, what would you say? Would you say forget motion picture theaters and just go into streaming, or what?
I would pretty much say that, yeah. I think if you could do a couple of indies to learn your chops of sorts, but the day of the kind of entrepreneurial, of grabbing life by the seat of the pants, going with your gut instinct, is over. For example, when Rocky would never be made today. This never would have happened. It's over. Majority. The Godfather wouldn't be made today.
So today, you think the motion picture business is changing such that streaming is taking over, and you think the motion picture industry as you knew it, it'll thrive?
Well, yeah, I don't think it's going to ever have the golden era that it's had by far, because the audience, the demographic is different. They're now watching films on an iPhone. So it's not as though the theater has become this habitual shrine to coming attractions. And streaming, this is where, actually I'm gonna do one very, very soon called the Tulsa King, or the King of Tulsa. And it just allows you to breathe, the character to breathe out, to take 10 weeks, which is beautiful. Whereas in film, you have maybe 95 minutes, 110 minutes, and it's all a crapshoot. In other words, with films, you have a James Bond film, $300 million. You have one opening weekend.
So when you do that particular picture, are you writing any of it, or are you just acting in it?
This one is being written by Taylor Sheridan and, of course, Terrence Winter. And I am kind of like the
hired actor.
I'm the hired gun. But you do put your input. You try to, as you say, it's a lot easier to remember your own dialogue than someone else's. So you try to construct the sentence so it's easier to recall.
So you have three daughters.
Yeah.
Would those three daughters, would you recommend they go into the motion picture business?
If they're hyphenates, if they're going to go in just solely as, oh, I am an actress, rough. The day of the 30-year career, I think, long gone. I've been really fortunate, and I have something happened that I think is amazing, which I'm very proud of. I'm the only person who's ever had a #1 film in 6 different decades, which is remarkable.
So as you look back on your career, what would you say you're most proud of?
I was most proud of Rocky Balboa, the sixth one, because that was done with such skepticism, and I was at my career low, because it's all peaks and valleys in any career, any sport, anything. And I was in some serious valley of the unknown. And I came up with this idea at 59, 60 years old to play Rocky as a boxer and this and that. And they said, this is absurd.
So if Rocky had not worked,
Yeah,
and it had been a flop,
the first one.
had
Yeah.
been a flop, and what would you have done with your career? Where do you think you would have wound up?
Probably something in the equestrian world.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because you're very interested in horses.
Yeah, I'm very good on horses.
Isn't that kind of dangerous?
It's very dangerous, but it's something I grew up with.
Any regrets in your career?
Yeah, there's tons of regrets. There's always regrets. And it's frustrating because obviously you can't do anything about it, but there's certain roles you turn down. The politics weren't right. And I regret perhaps not being as adamant about surrounding yourself with like-minded people. And because, you know, you're dealing with very, very fragile egos, and everyone is usually running on a lot of fear. That's the fuel. And you got to like really trust your own instincts, because other people are looking out for their part of it. The director's looking out for his image, the writer's guarding the words, the actor's looking, hey, do I have more lines than that guy next to me? Everyone has a different motive for what they do.
So do you have a bucket list? Is there anything you haven't done that you really want to do?
I was thinking about the Nutcracker Suite, but my ankles are not as what they were,
Okay.
so that's not happening.
So today, when you go to a restaurant or you go out anywhere, do people come up to you all the time for pictures, autographs? Do people come up and say, I want to arm wrestle you or something like that?
They do all the time. And usually with an arm wrestler, I go, oh, having done a film about it, you don't know who's the killer in the room. Some fellow will come with you with pipe stem arms, and he's a savant in arm wrestling. So you never know.
Well, you and I were having dinner not too long ago, and a little boy came up.
Oh, that's right.
And he wanted to arm wrestle you, and you arm wrestled him, and you let him win.
Of course. Because what if he did win? This way, at least I can fake it.